Yeah.
Yes, greetings everyone. Welcome to the Grit Talk Show, episode 36. For those of you who are new to this, Grit Coaches is a platform which connects coaches to clients, individuals, and organizations. We are a community of wonderful coaches from around the world. So, if you are a coach and you'd like to join us, please get in touch with me or check out www.gridcoaches.com. In this series of Grid Talk Show, we cover the journey of different coaches and the wonderful work that they are doing in their particular niches. Today, we have with us a special guest, Prabhakaran Gopalan Nair, and he is based in Singapore. He is someone who's very senior and has spent years having conversations in aviation, ground handling. He is a relationship coach, life relationship coach, an author, speaker, and a thought leader. And we are really honored to have you here, Gopalan Prabhakaran.
Thank you. Thank you. You can call me Gopalan.
Yes. The topic that you selected today, what does having a conversation actually mean? I think we live and breathe conversations every day and without thought. What do you feel are the components of a good conversation as opposed to a conversation that we have mindlessly? But before we go there and delve deeper into conversations, please share something about yourself and your work, human wisdom. What's the whole thought process behind this?
The whole idea of life relationship is that there is a relationship to everything that you do. Whether it's your phone, with people, with inanimate things, you're still having a relationship. It's just like, how do I tell something about somebody? It's when the person gets out of bed, he doesn't do his bed. It tells me about that person. Yeah? So everything in our journey is a relationship we have with our life journey. And part of that is conversations. The conversations that we have with fellow human beings. And I found that from a very young age, I was very aligned to simplicity in things. Life is actually straightforward, but we make it complicated. Right? We have divided ourselves. Humanity has divided ourselves by nationality, by race, by color, by religion, by all kinds of things. And that's why there's conflict even until today. We have not seen ourselves as one species, as humanity, where we don't need to belong to a particular group. You know, the word belong feels almost like being enslaved. You know, it said, that car belongs to me, the house belongs to me. You can, nothing belongs to anybody. It's just to keep in order. I mean, it's man-made, right?
Yes.
But we are a part of a community. Yes. We can be a part of a tribe. We can be a part of a family, but you don't belong to a point that you have no say, you know, that somebody owns you. Right? Yeah. So basically, if you want to talk about human wisdom is about understanding yourself, how you operate, because we are all operating on the same software, the same sounds, the same system, the same OS, so to speak. Everybody is no different from me. We are all the same. And yet we are diverse, we are different because of our experiences in life, which makes us unique. And that's why I've said in one of my quotes before that we are as unique as our fingerprints. Our journey is as unique as our fingerprints. And yet we are not that different at all. And like a 10-year-old girl said, we are all ice cream, just different flavors.
Absolutely.
You know, and you won't find the chocolate ice cream quarreling over with the strawberry ice cream, right? Because in essence, we're all ice cream. Just because we have a different color and different, it gives you a different experience, strawberry flavor and chocolate flavor, right? Yeah. So you ask, I hope that takes care of the human wisdom part.
Yes.
What goes into a conversation? You mentioned something like conversations are essentially an exchange between two or more people. But what is it? What do we exchange? What do we exchange? Thoughts, ideas, opinions, our values, beliefs, our worldview. This is how I look at the world, right? So these are data, right? Information, right? You're receiving the information. So those are, once you recognize what constitutes exchange, when you have a conversation, what really happens, right? Is there's a flow of thoughts and ideas. There's a flow of opinions. We all have opinions. Some we say are more opinionated than others, right? And it is a reflection of our values, beliefs, and worldview. Just to name a few, in view of the limited time that we have, and of course, emotions. Conversations are about emotions. Conversations are also not just words, because when you are in conversation with someone, you engage in verbal and non-verbal, don't you?
Yes.
What is being said and exchange, what is not being
What is
said.
not being said.
Because the unsaid has a way of saying too. And why do we even converse? Because it is part of connecting with another human being, right? And yet, how much is verbal? 10%, 20%, right? The rest are all non-verbal, tonality and other forms of communication, right? Silent treatment, that's communication too. I'm angry with you, I don't talk to you for the whole day. That is, I'm communicating my emotion. I want to be left alone. No, I don't want to talk about it. Tonality, language. Or there are people who even, see, the thing about human connection in conversation is that I mentioned being a part of rather than belonging to a tribe, family, or community or nation. It's a reflection of heritage and culture as well. And to enrich each other because of that diversity, through that diversity. Right? What else happens in a conversation? Do you feel safe? being in conversation with the other person. So safety and security is also important in conversation, a safe space.
Yes. So coming to this question comes to my mind. There are some people who particularly like delving in deeper conversations, as opposed to some people who enjoy the small talk, as we call it, or the talking about the fun things, events, people. But some people like, I think it intellectually stimulates them perhaps. So, what do you think is the reason behind this choice?
Okay. Deep versus superficial conversations. There is a
Yes.
place for both. There is a place for both. We can't be all serious, deep every hour of the day, right?
Yes.
We need to chill out as well, right? We need humor in conversation because that provides trust and rapport as well.
Mm.
So of course, there are people who love deep conversations, at the intellectual level, right?
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And there are people who prefer small talk, chit chat. What's wrong with that? But it's how that conversation flows, isn't it?
Yes, so my question, sorry to cut you here, my question to you is, since you've worked decades in the aviation, ground handling and all, and you've witnessed a lot of conversations taking place at the airport, how are people generally conversing? What kind of conversations do you think that you've witnessed and that normally people have around there?
Uh, because traveling is stressful.
Hmm.
Traveling is full of anxiety because you don't know whether your flight is leaving on time. Will you be able to connect your flight? Will my bags arrive? So they're always on the edge. So all you need is say something which doesn't land correctly, and there'll be a shouting session. So there'll be a lot of emotions flying. So for me, you need to be transparent and open in your conversation. So if a flight is delayed, what is the reason? You need to communicate that. Why? To build trust and rapport. People need to believe what you're saying and not say that they're not receiving honest information, open information. Oh, he's not telling us everything. He's only telling us that's the tip of the iceberg. In 2 hours' time, he probably tell us the aircraft is still not ready. And it'll be a creeping delay, They
Yes, but
probably
then
don't
it
have an
is an
aircraft.
unpredictable situation, is it
Ah,
not? So
no,
how
but
can you tell them a definite answer?
so for me, I don't need to prepare my speech. When I speak to 300 people in the gateway room, I just tell them as it is. And if I don't have an update for them, I tell them. I have had seasoned travelers who refuse to go back to the lounge. They prefer to sit in the cramped gateway room because it says, Gopalan, you're talking. I sit here, you're giving me up-to-date information, you're being honest about it, you're not worried that we will get upset. And you also prepare us that if in 2 hours this situation is not resolved, I have an aircraft coming in 2.5 hours time. That if the aircraft is serviceable, we'll use that and we'll be able to get out in 6 hours time. So if it doesn't happen, fine. So until then, let's give our engineers a chance to work on that aircraft, right? So if you're not open and transparent, you cannot build the rapport and trust with people. So like I could have a deep conversation with you, but you might see it as a shallow conversation. And you could be
Yes.
having a deep conversation with me, and when I'm receiving it, and I say,
Yes.
why is this person talking at a very superficial level? What is she not telling me? Not things like that. So it doesn't mean that just because you think, because that's your perception,
Yes.
just because you think you are having a deeper conversation, it does not mean that the client is feeling the same thing. You will only know when the client shows up with vulnerability, where the client opens up. So a lot of us, you see, are not present in our conversation because we're always distracted by, people will talk to you and say, when you're talking to somebody, you need to clear your mind, have an empty mind. You got to empty your mind. You got to come like a blank canvas. That's not being real. We all bring in our own mental model into a conversation, whether you like it or not. The question is, are you aware? Are you aware? Are you being empathetic or sympathetic? Are you open and transparent?
Yes. So that means that for a meaningful conversation to take place, two people have to be at the same wavelength.
That's another thing. That's another thing. Both of us can go and watch a cricket match or a football match and be supporting the same team, but we will walk away with different experiences. What I experience or what you experience can be very different because of our own individual relationship with that game. So when we talk about people, do they have to be at the same wavelength or like-minded to have a great conversation? Not necessary. An attentive listener versus speaker, right? The speaker is also a listener. He's not
And
only
some
listening.
people are good at speaking and some people are good at listening.
Yeah, it's a balance, isn't it?
Yes.
And the listener is also a speaker. Right? And we all like to talk about ourselves. And we tend to take a backseat when we're listening to somebody talking about other people, themselves.
Yes, we tend to yawn.
So being present, the presence of mind, because being present is the best present you can give to the person you are in conversation with. These are all nothing new. It's basic courtesy, then. It's basic human wisdom.
Yes, but the concentration span is very limited. So it isn't possible for you to be continuously present during a conversation. Like giving my own example, I'm really interested in people and their stories, but there is a time while I'm talking, being human, that the mind wanders off, and I'm sure that happens with a lot of people too. So
it does.
Yes. How do we bring ourselves back to that conversation?
You need to catch. That's why awareness is important. You need to be aware. That means you need to be aware and catch yourself drifting. We are not saying that you can actually train yourself not to drift, because it's a human tendency, natural human. So if it's a natural human tendency, part of the training is recognizing that it is part of a natural human tendency, and instead of trying to fight it, acknowledge and accept that this is a natural human tendency. And what is the best thing you can do? Catch yourself and get back into the conversation. Go back to the last thing that we were talking about, to bring it back to the table.
Yes, that brings me to a very interesting question. Sometimes people, when they drift off and they've missed some part in a conversation, they feel that it would be impolite if we ask the person, sorry, what were you saying?
Ah,
I skipped it or something like that. So they're hesitant. So they feel that maybe we might not break the flow of the other person's thoughts or ideas. So it's better to let them continue. Um, so,
I think I think
how do we do that?
I think you need to be honest to
Hmm.
the speaker, with the speaker. You need to be honest with the speaker. I think um, I didn't quite understand that last bit.
That's a good one.
Um, uh, would you mind? Would it be okay for you to just go through that again? I didn't quite follow the last bit.
So I will give you an example of what happens with me. Um, Now my husband is a great communicator, and he has this habit of questioning what he was talking about. So if even if you don't say it that what were you saying, or do you mind repeating, he will catch that you hadn't been listening to that part, because and that's how he works with all his team members too. So it becomes uncomfortable for other people sometimes, because they feel that they're going to be cross questioned any moment on that. And I think a lot of leaders do that too. So how, if we are such good communicators and we can, we think we're being very clever, actually catching them off guard. So do you think it's clever, or shall we uh, do it in a more subtle manner, as you said, uh, that I missed the last bit? So how do we as leaders shift this, and instead of just outright catching them off guard and making it very apparent that you were not present or you drifted off, how can we communicate it in a politer manner?
Awareness, tonality, language. Because as leaders, if we pick on our team by questioning them on what you just spoke about, um, to validate if they were listening and make them feel uncomfortable, it's not going to benefit the relationship as a leader. You know, I would rather accept that not everybody can be 100% present, and acknowledge that not everybody can be 100% present or alert. And you as the speaker, you always want everybody to be present 100%, right? Especially if you are a leader. And if you cannot accept that, somebody might find that speech boring because it's one-way traffic. So if you see, when a conversation has it's not a conversation, it's more me telling you one-way traffic, people are going to doze off. So the best way to engage people is you make a point, ask them what they feel about it. You make a point. So people are actively engaged in the conversation. Every new point you raise or idea you raise, what do you think about that? So I could be wrong. This is what I was looking at, bringing the company forward. So what do you guys think? And if the guys come back and say, I didn't quite catch that part. It was not clear. Instead of, you could ask, which part of it is not clear? But instead of creating animosity, we should be more empathetic in our approach, kinder. I know this is a very difficult part of the afternoon, after lunch, half the senior guys sitting down there must be dozing off. So we don't expect everybody to be so alert after lunch, right? So we are normally try to have meetings in the morning, not in the afternoon. But sometimes you can't help it. You need to have it in the afternoon too. And always keep meetings nothing more than an hour.
Mm.
You know?
So good conversation. You mentioned relationships and being more empathetic and kinder when having them. So good conversations. Do the conversations determine the relationship, or does the relationship determine the
Okay.
conversation?
It takes two hands to clap.
Mm.
It takes two hands to clap. They are interdependent, right? So, like, before I go into that in a moment. So when we talk about, we may be like-minded, similar interests, likes, dislikes, hobbies, subjects, and be just as diverse is in the approach and interpretation, or in the perception towards being like-minded that makes us different. So all through, the idea is that in a conversation, one party is negotiating, is a negotiation of his or her thoughts with the other, and vice versa. Right? So now we talk about how would a conversation play in deciding the quality of a relationship? The quality of will the quality of the relationship determine the quality of the conversation, or the quality of the conversation which determines the quality of the relationship? For me, in fact, I think it's a very good question. So that's why I said it takes two hands to clap, right? So if you have great quality in relationship and you're not a good communicator, you will have to find other ways of communicating, right? So qualitative aspect of any relationship is a reflection of the qualitative aspect of the conversation. Likewise, so it doesn't solely depend on being a great orator or listener, but it helps. Of course, it helps, right? So remember, the verbal part is only 10-20% of spoken language, which in itself is very limiting because it's an ordered form of communication. Whereas the body language, the non-verbals, the hand, the heart, and the sensory perceptions, nobody has to teach you how to use it. It's part of your nature, isn't it? Human nature.
Yes.
Right? You don't have a manual how to use your hand, how to feel. You just feel.
Yes.
Right?
The vibes that we get from the others, from their movements and everything.
The intuition.
They just come naturally to us. Yes.
So that's why we don't need a manual for that. But you need to understand how it works, how the operating system works. Right? To better understand others. So if you know, somebody just called me stupid, I'm feeling hurt. So the other person will feel the same way. So if you understand, okay, I'm now observing the hurt I'm going through. That's part of human wisdom. Instead of reacting, you take a step back to understand what's going on. I know something is going on there. I'm now feeling anger building up. If I react, it's going to blow up, right? It becomes an expression of that emotion, right? So if you sit back and say, what if I don't react? What if I just sat there, observed what's going on within me, and acknowledge and hold the other person still in unconditional positive regard, respect, still hold a space, right? Then you prevent a fight.
Yes. When you say unconditional positive regard, I think when we're having conversation, mostly, as you said, it's about us and not about the other people. So even the feelings aspect that, when it comes to positive regard, we are not thinking whether they were intending positivity or not. I think we're operating from our own, how we're interpreting them. And, we interpret them at our own discretion and with judgment. Not and the positive regard is often missing. So having that level of neutrality, how do we bring that level of neutrality to conversation? Through awareness?
Yes.
Again?
Awareness, because everything is about being conscious. You see, most of the time we are operating from an unconscious incompetence. We need to move that to conscious incompetence and then move it to conscious competence. From unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence to conscious competence to unconscious competence. Then after a while, we go back to unconscious incompetence. And then we need to be aware. You create that awareness to being conscious of that incompetence. I'm not very good with conversations. I don't seem to have picked up the non-verbals. I need to focus more on that. I need to be more present. And then you move to being consciously competent. Now I'm picking up the non-verbals. Now I'm picking up the emotion.
Yes,
Now
it has to do with the value of self-improvement or learning that there's always room for improvement. Even our communication, we have to see that, where did we, like, we have to be more reflective on how we did from our part.
Most of us, because we react, we don't have a reflective practice. We practice immediate response. Yeah, it's also a practice. By practice, somebody said something, I need to react. I cannot just sit still. I'm not going to take this lying down. Right? But when you reach a point like being a mother, for instance, where the child can be as naughty as ever, but the mother still has unconditional positive regard for the child. Of course, these days we are seeing a lot of other things as well, where the mother is beating up the child until the child dies, right? Abuse. Because of their own temper, they have no control over their own temper. Just because the child refused to follow orders, right? Because you have not given the child a safe space to operate on. And that's why, and the child is like a sponge, right? Absorbing everything they see between parents. Every day I wake up, I see both of them arguing with each other. I think that's okay now. It's normal behavior. And then when I grow up, I behave that same way. Because our mind is conditioned from young. Right? Again, goes back to awareness. We need to be aware that we are growing up being conditioned by family, by our parents, our siblings, our extended family, and then our close friends, and then our working colleagues. What is your relationship with your job? What is your relationship with your peers, subordinates, and your superiors? Everything is a relationship. So is conversation.
Everything is a relationship. And with humans, we can have improved relationships through reflective conversation.
Yeah, yeah. See, the thing is, it can only happen if you are in a safe space. There is trust, there's mutual respect, there's presence. You need not be 100% present, but you can work towards it. It's an aspiration, right? You aspire to be as present as you can, understanding that there will be pockets where you drift, and how you can catch yourself drifting and come back to the conversation.
Yes, so thank you so much for this lovely conversation. And one thing you said about a person thinking that they're going deep in a conversation, but the other person does not think that it's deep from their perspective. This is something I've seen, and I'm sure you have to. A lot happening, that people are often saying something else, the other person is understanding very differently to what the original speaker is saying, and then they continue having the conversation and they end at a good note too. And that's the conversation they had amazingly, because the both of them were at totally different, on different pages with different perspectives.
Yeah, like I said, it's just like watching, being at a football game. You can be supporting the same, watching the same moves, but what you bring back is different.
Yes. So, and thank you so much for sharing that, it's normal that we all drift off in conversation, because a lot of my life personally, I spent feeling guilty that, I am the one who probably wanders off and everyone else is so present. But this is human, how we are wired. We do naturally wander off because our concentration spans are limited. And it's all right to be authentic and honest and ask the other person, or tell them that we missed out on this part, or say it in some other more polite manner. But authenticity, honesty in conversation, empathy. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to leave with, or some golden nugget that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I think what I like to leave your listeners with is that when you're in conversation with someone, don't try to be someone else. Be the voice in the conversation. Be your own voice in the conversation. Use your voice. Let your voice convey the message. You don't have to try, to try and impress the other person. That happens in relationships too.
Yes.
Just be yourself. Less stressful. Less. In fact, it's just being human, right?
Yes.
So if I'm like that, I'm like that. No, you have to learn to accept me for who I am. And if you can't accept, then it's not my fault. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not. No, there's nothing to do with you. It's the person on the other side who needs to deal with their own inconsistencies in their wiring. So yeah, that's basically what I have to share. So authenticity is so important. Being authentic, being yourself, and
Being
not
yourself.
what others want you to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
And being aware when you're not being yourself, and try to be, we want to please people. We want, as you said, validation. So it's all right if we're not pleasing people. Uh, it won't serve us well in the longer run. Being our own selves will serve us better. So learn to be yourself, and thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here today. Those of you who are watching, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and we'll get back to them. If you want to connect with Gopalan, he's on LinkedIn. And where else can we find you?
Uh, I think LinkedIn is fine.
Yes.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well.
All right.
Yeah.
So you can always search those platforms too if you are more active on one or the other more.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I've learned so much today about conversations, about drifting off, about you know, actually knowing when the other person is actually authentically engaged in the conversation when they're being vulnerable. So that was really beautiful and something I learned today, besides the other lots of things that you shared and the insights. Thank you so much.
Most
And
welcome.
wishing you a nice weekend.
You
And those
too.
of you who are watching, have a lovely weekend. On this note, this is me signing off. Uh, Goodbye and good evening.